Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Informs Atlanta chapter session. This is about capitalizing your careers using CAP. So, CAP is Certified Analytics Professional. So, we are very happy that you could join us. Before we get started, a few pieces of information. First, a little about Informs. If this is your first session, joining us as an Informs, then we need to kind of share how wonderful the world, a community of Informs is. It's not just about academics, it's about a not just about Atlanta as a chapter, but a global community connecting a diverse set of disciplines in data, decision sciences, operations sciences, and what we call today as artificial intelligence, applied AI. All of these different specialties come together and members share, communicate, discuss, and network at both the academic and at the professional level. Atlanta chapter is doing its share by helping the same set of industry professionals and academics and students join together to make smarter decisions for a better Atlanta community. We work and we invite all eh, types of academic and students into our fold. We have many networking events that we sponsor and hold throughout the year. Today's is a Today's session on CAP is one such event where we are really focusing on how you can build your analytic career with a very well acknowledged and recommended certification. Coming up on August 19th is our marquee Iraq conference. It's a regional conference that we are hosting. The theme is Building Bridges to the Future. It is going to be held in Emory Business School, again, with the connection that we want to make and maintain with students as well as professionals in that environment. An annual Informs conference is going to be held in Atlanta. So, this is a wonderful opportunity for all of you to join us on October 26 to 29 to meet and enjoy the very high value discussions in the area of applied analytic and sciences. As a part of the chapter, we do have a social get together on November 13th, which we welcome you to join us and learn more about what you can do joining Informs and what we can do networking with each other and sharing thoughts and ideas. So I have provided the QR code for the Atlanta chapter. So without much ado, let me switch over to the introducing you to Beverly and Dr. Sue, who will be taking us through the CAP webinar today. So as you want to introduce yourself, I will switch over to the new slides.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Beverly White. I'm been in analytics and science and now AI for over 30 years. I started my career in decision sciences back when it was an unknown term. We had 6 people in my graduating class. It was kind of funny. And I've worked in academia for over 20 years. I've worked in consulting for about 15. And I've also been in on the client side, working for companies like Sun Company, Cox Communications, and Truist Bank. So thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, my name is Sue Rayburn, and I'm really excited to partner with Beverly here on this webinar to help give you some information on this CAP certification, which I attained last year. And I've been in data and analytics for a long time now, and I am currently the Vice President of Data and Analytics at Delta Community Credit Union. And we have achieved great progress with our BI program, and we're taking it towards ensuring that we get value from AI as well. Previously, I've worked at companies like Equifax, Cox Automotive, and other prestigious companies within the Greater Atlanta area. And I'm happy to be here to present along with Beverly and answer any questions that you may have about this really, relevant certification, I would say. So in terms of why I pursued CAP, I have an eclectic background. I started my career in finance. I moved over to IT in a business analyst role. I have held positions within product organizations using data effectively. So my quest was to really understand the fundamentals, take a life cycle approach to analytics and see how that would help us standardize and get a curriculum in place in my current company. So as we move towards more of this citizen data science model, wanted to make sure that we were adopting it correctly and using it appropriately so that you're connecting, you're able to frame business problems properly to get the desired, derive the desired outcomes. And why I took it personally was, I'm a lifelong learner. I have several certifications, and for me, I wanted to kind of test the waters before I advised other people to launch down, take the same path. So for me, it was very personal. I wanted to make sure that I was recommending something that I had confidence in, and I can tell you with great pride that that's what CAP helped me do. In terms of, a personal insight as to how I went about this, I'll have to say that, like I mentioned, I'm not a data scientist by training, but what this helps you do is essentially understand the business of analytics and drive, value for your companies using analytics and data effectively. So I would say that, those of you that are aspiring to take this certification, that's what this certification really helps you do. And I hope to give you more information as we proceed along. Thank you. Beverly, on to you.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, when I pursued the CAP, it was, I think, 2015. I met Louise Worley, who was an Informed member at one of the conferences, and I'm a long time Informs, I don't want to say member, because I think my membership lagged here and there, but at least participant. So before it was Informs, it was two organizations called ORSA and TIMS. And I would attend ORSA TIMS meetings. And then in the early 90s, it became Informs. I started going to the Informs conferences. And one of the conferences, I met someone who was talking about the CAP. So I originally took that or earned the CAP for two reasons. Number one, professor at Georgia Tech, and I wanted my students to earn the CAP. And I didn't want to ask them to do that until I had participated in it myself. So similar to Sue, and that she's trying to encourage her teams, I was trying to encourage my students, but I wanted to sort of test it out first. And the second reason is I'm also a lifelong learner, but I needed something to force me to stay a lifelong learner. And this is the kind of certification that you can't just earn it and forget about it. This is a certification that requires continuous education, constant learning. This is also an incredibly dynamic field. So those are the top two reasons. And then the third was when I first started, there were very few people in my field, and there were very few options even for analyst jobs. not to mention data science or decision sciences. But by 2015, I started seeing that the space had become more crowded and there were a lot more colleagues that could collaborate with and call upon. But that also meant I need a way to stay out. So that was the third reason why I pursued the CAP. So it was to try before I ask my students. Secondly was stand out and look a little bit original, from the crowd. And then thirdly was to create a learning plan around the CAP that sort of forces, if you will, continuous education. So our agenda today, we first want to talk about what is the CAP. We're talking about the CAP already, as if you know. So we'll define it real briefly. Then Sue and I are both going to talk about some of the top reasons to pursue the CAP. And keep in mind that these reasons can also apply to other types of certifications. It's just that we're mostly talking about the CAP today. So we'll talk about the reasons to pursue certifications in general, but specifically the CAP. And then Sue's going to talk about how to go about pursuing, and then we'll take your questions right around 12:50 Eastern. All right, so what is this CAP that we're already continuously referring to? So CAP refers to or stands for the Certified Analytics Professional. It's a type of designation that has approximately less than 1,000, maybe 800-ish globally that are certified under this designation through Informs. Because it's through Informs, it has great recognition and prestige. It's also vendor neutral. There are all kinds of different certifications. You can get knowledge-based certification, you can get skills-based, you can get tool-based kinds of certification. The CAP is more of a knowledge-based, vendor-neutral certification with a focus on problem solving. The CAP covers 7 main domains, and there are many reasons why I really like the CAP, but this is probably the main one, is that it follows somewhat of a scientific method applied to analytics, data science, and now more AI. So the 7 main domains are listed here, but essentially it goes from start to finish, from problem framing, business problem framing, moves into analytics framing, and then data management, methodology, analytics and modeling, deployment, even lifecycle management. So what you typically will see in certifications, or honestly even in degree programs, is that they focus a little bit on 3, but mostly on 4 and 5. And so you're not getting some of the problem framing and translating it into an analytics problem, the deployment, and the lifecycle management. These are things that are critical for the job market and for different hiring managers. These are skills that are oftentimes neglected. So I feel like the CAP covers this way more holistically from end to end, and that's one of the things that's so appealing. There are definitions of the Certified Analytics Professional Program. It can be a bit challenging, especially the test. Some people have said that the test can be very challenging. You do have to prepare yourself for it. So there are 3 different levels. There's the CAP Essentials program, which is a good place to start. This is typically for people that are maybe fresh out of school or even still in school, and they're trying to just earn the Essentials designation. The CAP Pro is for people that have more experience in the area, and then the CAP Expert is for the highest level. And these 3 designations make it possible for anybody to earn the CAP. Initially, we only had a CAP, and that was it. And so the leap to move in from the base or the ground all the way to a full CAP designation was a little bit difficult for some. So this gives you a progression that you can plan your career and your objectives around ascending into the CAP Expert designation. Sue and I both hold the CAP Expert designation, and we're thrilled to have that. Now, why does a CAP matter? Like, what is the big deal? Well, there are several reasons, most of which we have here, but there are some reasons that we didn't even articulate on here. As we were coming up with our top reasons, we started thinking about it more, and we said, well, there's also this, and there's also this, and there's also that. So what we've done is, in addition to our content, we've also got some quotes that we pulled from others in our field that are also CAP experts. So you'll see these scattered kind of throughout the presentation. The top reasons why the CAP matters, one is that it is a highly ranked certification. So it receives acknowledgement from CIO.com, Project Pro, and Teal HQ, saying that it's one of the most sought after, has global recognition, and process coverage. That process coverage is what I was talking about earlier, where it's more end to end. The vendor neutrality is also something that is highly sought after. To quote Bless, I've actually met her before. She works, I think, at an oil and gas company. Bless said the CAP certification is a clear way to think through the full data process, from messy data to business-ready insights. It helped me speak the same language of data engineers, analysts, and decision makers, which made collaboration much smoother. And she earned her CAP in 2018. Scott mentioned that CAP is a powerful differentiator. It signals a commitment to rigorous standards, ethical practice, and trusted leadership in analytics. That is another point. We sort of call it the 5 E's. You have to have experience, ethical. There's a very high ethical standard that you have to adhere to, education, exam, and I feel like there's one more. But the ethical standards are a part of the CAP, and that was another thing that I found very appealing, aside from the process, the vendor neutrality, is that by having the CAP, you are committing to a high ethical standard as defined by Informs. So that was number one, enhances credibility and trust. Number two is certifications like CAP can help professionals stand out in a very crowded field, which could lead to salary increase or new job opportunities. As quoted by O'Reilly and Birchworks, certified pros earn more on average. You also see an increase in job offers if you look at these sources. More career mobility, especially valuable if you're transitioning or to climb the ladder. And fourthly, professional credibility. The certification signals verified competence. This is not just you saying it, or this is an outside agency saying this person has a grasp on these concepts and understands how to really put them into practice. So one of the quotes that we have is, CAP boosts my professional confidence, allowing me to ground strategic recommendations in concrete insights and speak with greater authority. And that was Caroline since 2021. And then the third reason is that CAP matters and is important because it emphasizes not just the analytics mindset, but also pulls in business acumen and problem solving, really. So some of the domains include the business problem framing, which translates stakeholder needs into analytics. If you ever witnessed this, and I have numerous times, where you have a stakeholder who's trying to communicate their business problem to an analytics professional, oftentimes there's a gap. And the reverse is true as well when an analytics professional is trying to communicate something technical to a business stakeholder. And so the CAP helps bridge the gap between the communication of these two parties. So being able to deliver insights in actionable business terms, and also the lifecycle management aspect of aligning the models with real world usability, not building models just for models' sake or to, increase your ability to build models, but to actually increase or to actually create models that help with real world usability. So a couple of quotes from our external source, CIO.com. CAP validates full cycle analytics competency. That really says something. TLHQ says that CAP ensures professionals can align with strategic business goals. And then DataCamp says CAP stands out by blending analytics techniques with real-world decision-making frameworks. Now we're going to talk a little bit about, okay, we get it, CAP. What is CAP? Where does it come from? How was it formed? And why is it important? Now, what do I got to do? So how do you pursue a CAP? To qualify and apply for a CAP, you need to have 3 to 7 years experience, depending on your education. You must agree to code of ethics. It's the exam itself costs about $495 for members and about $700 for non-members. And the MCQs, 3-hour exam with about 70% passing. So the questions, there's about 100 questions. These are the things that you have to do to qualify for the CAP. And Sue, do you want to talk about study materials?
Yeah, sure. As someone who took this exam last year, I can tell you some of the strategies here are really going to depend upon your education, your specific experience, and obviously, your learning style. But I can share with you some of the things that I applied when I was preparing for this exam and for this test, and also what I heard from other students that I connected with, as part of preparation for taking the certification. So the first thing I'd say is get very familiar with the handbook, which really details the process of how to take this exam, how you qualify, what are the things that are required, etc. The study guide is invaluable. It gives you a detailed peek into each of the domains and what you're expected to know. There is also a job task, alignment or a framework where it tells you what tasks are typically aligned with each of the domains. So it gets you familiar with, for instance, as it relates to business problem framing, how do you identify stakeholders? That could be one of the tasks you do at the beginning of really understanding what the business problem at hand is, right? So getting familiar with these things is extremely important. It's available on the website. If you go to certifiedanalytics.org, you'll get a lot of this, in a downloadable form that helps you get familiar with the domains and what is expected, etc. The other approach is there are sample tests available on the website. I would ask you to really take the sample test to establish a baseline, really understand where you are. There is a difference between knowing something practically and, answering questions in a certain way that's expected on the exam. So, getting familiar with the methodology, what are the types of questions that are asked is important. So taking that sample test is important to establish a baseline. The T approach is all about, if you're familiar with the Pareto principle, where you take a very focused approach to areas that are your strength, but at the same time, the horizontal bar on a T applies to really getting familiar with all the domains, or at least getting educated on the glossary and the vocabulary that is used across all of the domains, but taking a more detailed approach in areas that you are very comfortable with. So for instance, if you're a data scientist, you have used a lot of modeling techniques, you may want to lean in on that strength. For me, the data piece of it was something that I could relate to because that's my background. So, and it also forms a big percentage of the questions that are asked. 21% of the questions do come from this area. So, identifying those areas that are tested where there's a more, increased questions that come from those sections obviously makes sense. Focusing your efforts on business problem framing, analytic framing, and data will give you a lot of most of the questions that will be derived from those areas. So focusing on those absolutely makes sense. The other thing I did was I did join the Informs Prep class, which was helpful in terms of really giving me fundamental start in terms of the framework and how to apply it and how to start prepping for it. But there are other groups that you can connect with. If you become an Informs member, you can connect with other Informs members that are planning to take the certification. So ultimately what I did was connect with other professionals who are going to take it in the same time period, and we formed a study group. And what we would do is we would prepare each of the domains and present it. A nice way of really learning the content is to prep and teach, so that the others would come back to you with questions, and it helps you clarify your own study approach. And the getting familiar with the glossary and using flashcards to kind of remember terms and what they mean is another technique. But I'll want to caution you here, because the exam is not really about just regurgitating stuff. It's very much about it's very scenario based. So it's going to give you a specific scenario as it relates to a data set that you would receive, and how would you analyze that, and there would be questions on that, right? So you may want to make sure that you practice those type of questions, and that you're going to get on the sample test. The sample test gives you a good flavor of the types of questions that are typically asked. And for me, I'll tell you, I spend a lot of time with questions and doing mock tests and really understanding and refining where I got an answer wrong, and really digging into the material to really help me interpret the question better. So what I did was I actually leveraged, you took some of the practice questions and fed it into, our friend ChatGPT, and got a set of similar questions. But, I would caution you here again, don't rely on the answers that ChatGPT generates. You got to make sure that the answers are not, hallucinations, so to speak. So that was a big lifesaver for me. There was a book that I was able to purchase on Amazon. It's a book by Rajan Gupta, and I can put a link to that on the chat here. But it's a good book that has about 250 questions. A lot of them will be the types of questions you should expect on this exam. And I would say that helped me out a lot, because again, it gave me some structure to what is tested. How do you take those the domains within the framework and apply them to scenarios. And those questions that I saw in this book, and also the sample test, was what I used as a basis to create my own and test my knowledge. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, as far as topics, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I can cover this. Yeah. We can cover it together, so Phil can chime in, of course. But as far as key topics to know, you definitely need to know about different analytical methods. So I would try to hit the big ones. Obviously, regression, ANOVA, PCA and vector analysis, neural nets, different machine learning topics like cluster, k-means, centroid. Need to know what nearest neighbor means. One of the things that I try to do was I put something in the Q&A. I actually didn't. I probably should have, but I thought, let me just take it first. Let me just take it, because I don't believe there's a risk in taking it multiple times. So I said, let me just take it. I ended up taking it without studying at all. I printed the guide. Because I took it a while back when printing was more common. I printed off the study guide and left it in my trunk and never looked at it. And then I took it and I passed. And so I just like, oh, well, okay. But I do recommend that when you study, you think about the analytical methods from a category standpoint. So what I mean is, if you're thinking about, this is a predictive method and this is a data reduction. Here's top 4 data reduction, or here's the top 3 classification, or top 2 heuristic methods, or like think about them from a category standpoint, because the way the questions are laid out, it presents. Last time I checked, you'll see a business problem presented, and then you might have a list of different was the most applicable analytical method, and you even if you don't know the exact method, if you say, well, it's some kind of, and I know that this is one of the similar methods, so I'm going to pick this one. So instead of trying to memorize every single analytical method known to mankind, sometimes it's better to think about it from a category standpoint. I've had good fortune because I became a decision scientist before it was really popular, and so I've had, before machine learning, I had hundreds of use cases that I've built, different models that I've either overseen or personally developed. And because of that, I was privy to all these different methods, some of which I even did by hand during my one of my programs. So I have 3 degrees in this stuff, and so that without having hundreds, it's difficult to have that kind of experience. But without having hundreds, I think the hack that I would give most people is to understand the categories of different analytics. Ironically, I actually had a harder time with some of the softer concepts because I'm much more of a quant, but there definitely are some softer concepts within project lifecycle, next best step kind of logic, problem framing, those sorts of things. But these are some of the most salient topics to know. But like Sue mentioned, the study guide itself is a great resource. Sue, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I think I mentioned this earlier, but you definitely want to ensure that you're using terminology that is consistent with how informs, how it's phrased in the questions that this test comes up with. Like for example, dependent variable, instead of something like, or instead of independent variables, you may think of features, but it uses the term independent variable. So just being familiar with the specific terminology that informs uses is very important. And I think I mentioned prioritizing the areas where you're weak in terms of doing that sample baseline and really establishing where there is a perhaps a gap to fill in terms of your knowledge. And I had a lot of those gaps because, like, unlike Beverly, I don't have a data science background. So, really understanding some of these optimization techniques. I really did look at a lot of YouTube videos, but at the end of the day, you're not required to know all the gory details. What they're testing you on is really understanding when to apply what. So the questions are also framed in a way that lead you down that path of understanding. So there is an some kind of a workflow situation where you're trying to understand how to fit an analytic solution to a process. What are some of those techniques? Like, for instance, you could apply queuing theory, or you could apply any kind of a system dynamics. Those type of techniques are what is needed in order to really apply a good solution. So knowing those how those techniques fit in with a particular problem is what is needed. But it does help to, kind of prioritize those areas where you don't know, and having a good idea of all of the domains at a high level at least, but focusing in on those areas where you have experience, or those are prioritized in the test. Like I said, the data is about 21% of the test, and they pretty much follow that percentage. So what I would say is, try to fill your gaps, but don't obsess over the things that you don't understand at a very detailed level. I would say lean in on your strengths, and try to have coverage across the spectrum, at least broad coverage. And then, really working with the study group to have be consistent about your preparation. It took me about 6 weeks to really, on a weekly basis, to meeting with my cohort, my study group, to really establish consistent study habits and review and things like that, and practice a lot of questions, different types of questions, to really test your knowledge. So that's what I would say really worked for me, and I passed in my first attempt. So I think it's very doable. It's just that you got to be diligent about it. You need to know where what your strengths are, your weaknesses are. Really understand your learning style. Working with others, studying with others definitely is a great strategy. And then really cluing into how Informs uses some of these terms, etc., and being clear about what those mean really help a lot.
Some of the common pitfalls, people think you have to be super, super technical and you have to sit down because you're at a laptop and taking this test, you're going to have to code. But from my understanding, you're not coding during the exam. Even with the new exam, I don't believe you're coding. So you don't have to, even if you, it's more about the structure and the process of how you go through creating code or a set of commands that would accomplish an analytic task. It's more about that process than the actual coding. So that's a common myth. The second one is people think like, I'm just going to study the analytics and I'll be fine. Business problem framing is not easy. I see it misdone on a regular basis. So, and part of it is, it's our fault for the education system. We don't do enough business problem framing, in my opinion. Maybe in a master's program during the final class of a practicum, you might learn about business problem framing. But for the most part, they focus on other topics throughout the life cycle of an analytic solution. So there's also not one book. There's not like a single book that everybody kind of centers around and says, okay, here's how we're going to learn problem framing. So because of, potentially because of our school system focus and the fact that this is a difficult thing to even teach, it's something that some people are really, other people are not naturally good at, but they can still learn. And also because there's not like a central accepted way of problem framing, this is a challenge for some people. And then thirdly is the project management and life cycle steps are also important. Like, so understanding just that those 7 domains and why they're aligned the way they are, what happens during each of them, and who are the different stakeholders and groups that you need to work with along that path. Understanding that life cycle and project management is another thing that people just don't think they need to worry about, but it is a big part of this certification. So after you pass this exam, it's not once and done, get it and forget it. You have to, and this again, I this as an advantage because this helps me define my learning path and my throughout my career to make sure that I'm staying current with the professional development units. Many times you can accomplish these just by having a full-time job in your field, plus a couple of other things. So I'm working on 2 books right now, and I've got 2 articles that I'm working on that are going to take a couple of years, but I've got 2 articles that I'm working on, and I work a full-time job as a consultant for a company called Wavical, which is 100% data and analytics. That's all we do. So that helps. Attending informs sessions like this one, or like the conference that we have coming up in October with about 1,000 colleagues. That will help. Making a presentation will help. Teaching a class will help. So these are things that you can do to stay active. And so you have to, in addition to earning it, you really are going to want to renew within a timely fashion so that you can prove that you're staying on top of your game, if you will. A couple quotes. As I transitioned from a 20-year military career, there are a lot of former military and military personnel that are involved in Informs, I think because of its rigor and its focus on academic and optimization of our operation kind of profession. As I transitioned from my 20-year military career to industry, I sought a globally recognized certification to emphasize the industry best practices, and that's why he pursued his CAP in 2022. Andrew Jackson, being a vendor neutral certification, the CAP is a way to show employers you understand the core competencies. Melisande says the CAP gave me a strong foundation I can apply anywhere. I used AI to build a custom study plan based on my weak areas and reorganize materials to fit how I learn best. Tailor your prep and get a mentor. Scott Radcliffe, he's at Emory University. He said the Informed Certified Analytics Professional certification is invaluable for aspiring data analyst leaders, as preparing for it strengthens your grasp of analytics as an organizational competency. And this is why I say, don't do what I do and just take it. Now, if you're gonna get scared and you're gonna take too long to take it, then go ahead and just take it first, and then you can kind of back in and do the studying. But the studying part is a really valuable step in this process. Preparing for it strengthens your grasp of analytics. So the preparation itself is a good part of the process. Mark says a pursuing CAP gave an opportunity to challenge himself, measure his knowledge against industry standard, and just confirm that he was going to grow as a professional. And then Shannon made a comment, earning my CAP opened up new opportunities for me, and the Informs Analytics framework has improved how our team approaches projects. That one on the bottom left got cut off just a little, but Joseph Kazier, he's a professor at Arizona State. He says the CAP changed his career. More than that, it transformed the way I approach analytics. It helped me grow from thinking about analytics in technical terms to taking a broader view of impact, starting my journey to study and teach AI and analytics success factors. He's also gone on to write a book recently, which is really interesting that you should check out. We had a question in the chat, and we do have an Inform staff member on the call, which maybe she can help us with some of these questions. But one question is, do you have to pay $700 every 3 years when the certification expires? It's my understanding that you do not have to pay the $700 every 3 years in order to renew. It doesn't really expire unless you let it lapse. Once you let it lapse, then you would have to recertify, which would mean paying the fee, redoing the exam. But if you don't let it lapse and you've submitted the information that shows that you're staying current, then my understanding is you just renew without a fee. Does anybody know if that's inaccurate? I have renewed, I guess, several times at this point, but I don't think I paid a fee to do so.
Yeah.
what other questions do we have? If anybody wants to, are they allowed to go off mute and ask questions, or do they have to put it Q&A as webinar style?
Only Q&A.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So, can I just ask one as to either one of you, but even to Sue, is when you think about, when you reflect back, and can you kind of talk to us about what are the key pieces that you're using in your day-to-day lives that you'd like to kind of have your team use also? So there is a communication and connection when you use a certain term, that they know what to expect later on. Is that a challenge that you're facing, that you think this training, say, have everybody in your team also familiar with this certification, might it help you achieve?
Yeah, one of the goals really for me at least was to establish a, consistency in terms of how we communicated. And you follow a standard process, you have good governance, you think about asking the right questions upfront. So I think that it's not enough for one person alone to have these techniques in place, right? I mean, it's if you're trying to do this at enterprise scale, you're trying to equip your organization to think about putting data-driven solutions to the problems that you have within the business. You really need to have a common approach to it. So for me, this really establishes that process. It gives us the fundamental vocabulary to be successful in terms of how we communicate. And the business framing becomes so critical because as I went through this process, as we built our initial models, we were able to communicate more effectively with the business. We were able to educate them in terms of what the purpose of a model was. How do you even, understand biases within the data that could be ethical challenges, for instance. So, it becomes less black boxy to even project members that are not familiar with this process. But to me, this is about really upskilling and enabling the company to think in more consistent ways to be able to really leverage the value of your data. So I think that for us, it definitely did that within our company.
And the reason why I'm saying is, as we encourage our audience and others who are listening in to take this certification, it may actually be worth it to see if you can buddy up with some other members within your team. So one, it's studying
Yes.
together in a part of the same cohort, but also sharing those experiences, and also gives you an opportunity to the synergy of the 2 or 3 or 4 of you in a team to be able to communicate and understand. So you don't have to go and teach, because we all have done our brown bag lunch sessions where we present what we learned to the team. But the impact is, as you do this together, it might actually have more synergies that we might want to think about.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. I think that that was one of my motivations in taking this and really testing it for myself. And having taken it, I can tell you that it has really widened my thinking. It has helped me really apply best practices. And thinking about problems, business problems in the right way, and realizing that once you have a model is not the end of the story. There's it's an ongoing process of refining and really ensuring that you're connecting context and content with consequences.
Yeah. And I just to add 3 things real quick. I've had to lean on the code of ethics in practice in the past. And that's been really helpful, because otherwise it should be enough, but sometimes you need a little bit more than just like, well, I don't think this should go this way, or, you need more than just like, I don't think, or I believe. But this way you can say like, look, I'm a CAP and this is my code of ethics, and, sometimes you have to draw a hard line. And so I've leaned on the ethical statement in my workings. The second thing I was going to mention is that I do hear people sometimes say, I feel like I'm speaking different language from my partners. And how do we all get on the same page as far as how we talk, which I think is similar to what Sue's saying, is that common literacy and that common way of thinking and understanding and that framework helps so much, because that way it makes it easier and more seamless to talk across your stakeholders, whether you're talking with data and ID or your business partners or whatever group, it makes it easier. And then the third thing that we didn't really mention, but hopefully you can see, is there's a community, there's a whole community of CAPS. And if you can attend the annual conference, you'll see a CAPS. I can tell you that when I've traveled for like my work or client or conference or something like that, I go into another city and I look up who I'm connected to from a CAP standpoint. Like, do I know CAPs in the area? And if they're available, they always are willing to meet, just to have coffee, talk about best practices or different things that they're seeing in the industry or whatever it is. But CAPS is almost like a guild. So, once you're sort of in the community, it connects you to lots of other people in a community with common interests and gives you an outlet for having real conversations.
Okay, I have one last question, which I don't know if the audience is playing this out in their mind, but I wanted to kind of bring the elephant into the room and address the elephant. And that is, we talk about CAP as an analytics certification. And right now, the whole wave on AI and Gen AI is so rampant. Uh, the skills don't seem apparent to us how can this analytics certification have relevance to what we are doing in building this Gen AI platform or an AI platform and enabling it? I think I know the answer. As far as AI fluency and analytic fluency have a lot to do in common, and what the course does, certification helps you do, is look at the holistic picture. But thoughts from each of you on this?
I mean, you still need to go through a process, even whether you're building a Gen AI solution or running a correlation, you still need to go through a process. And secondly, and Sue, I know you and I talked about this a little bit before. I actually think it might be even more relevant
Yes, yes.
now, because the importance of us being able to take on the human part and to understand the machine parts, the CAP helps with that.
Yep. What AI will help do is to automate a lot of it's a tool. At the end of the day, it will help you automate some of the grunt work. It does the ditch digging for you, but in terms of adding governance, process, business alignment, expertise, which is what we're talking about, this business of analytics that this certification really addresses, can never be covered when you're just focused on the technology pieces. And I think there's a huge role for responsible and ethical AI as we talk about, AI, potential AI agents, and it's not potential. This is almost in flight, and that's the world we're moving towards. And CAP really, emphasizes ethical use of analytics and, closely aligns with concerns around fairness, transparency, explainability, accountability. All of these things you cannot, take for granted. And I think having the human in the loop that can, help us emphasize some of these things is what is going to become critical, and that's why it's more relevant, I think, personally.
I agree with you. I think the principles are the same. It's just that we are seeing less. We may not have to lift the cover and see what's in the engine of the car. We don't need to know specifically, but having that knowledge allows us to drive better, even though the safety rules are going to be different for a self-driving car. But still, I think the awareness of if something goes wrong and you need to change the tire, you know why you need to change the tire. You may not understand the how. And I think the idea of the flow, the life cycle allows us to do better at what we are doing because we can anticipate or expect and plan. And I think those are key aspects, whatever we do, when there's analytics under the hood or in plain sight. I mean, so. Okay, let's see. Is there any other questions online? I don't see any.
If we think back to all the projects where we've had failures, and the blame has always been placed on models, you can really attribute it to not thinking about the framing the problem correctly, anticipating biases in the data, all of which, I don't think are going to just magically go away, even if you have AI agents and control. And that's where I think that it reinforces the role of thinking about the things that matter, which is really, the core domains that CAP emphasizes.
Okay, so we are almost at time. So thank you everybody for attending. A few things. We want to make sure you join us. We want to be there to support you as the president for the Atlanta Informs chapter. We really welcome you. Please connect with us if you're interested in CAP. We'd love to have a local cohort group start so you can be in person and get the support in person as well. And we always have Beverly and Sue and many other other members who have already been certified. We hope to also connect with them if you join this cohort that's coming up. More information on the website of CAP that was provided to you. And just a reminder again, 3 upcoming events from Atlanta chapter. We have Iraq conference at Emory Business School. Wonderful time to connect and see what really is about the informs community, how it survives, thrives, connects, and networks, and it's a wonderful community to within your reach locally. And also the annual social networking hour on November 13th. Of course, if you want to meet more CapExes, do attend or plan to attend the Informs annual meeting that is going to be held in downtown Atlanta. So make sure you can register at the Informs web page, which I don't think I put in here, but we will send this information to all those who attended today, so you'll have the links.
I put the link in the chat as well. It's a great opportunity. Inform's annual conference goes all over the place, and for it to land in Atlanta this year, we're big time lucky. So thank you guys so much for your engagement and for participating, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.